Your brain was built for a world that ended 10,000 years ago. It was wired to spot predators in the grass, defend territory, and chase status inside a tribe of maybe 150 people. Now that same ancient wiring is trying to survive open-plan offices, dating apps, and an endless feed comparing you to someone richer, stronger, or happier every scroll. No wonder so many modern men feel restless and quietly miserable. Philosophers solved this problem 2,000 years ago, just not for the reasons you'd expect. In this video, we break down why your brain still thinks it's living in the Stone Age, the caveman wiring behind status anxiety and constant comparison, why negativity bias kept your ancestors alive and now keeps you anxious, how Stoicism functioned as evolutionary psychology centuries before the term existed, the exact mental technique Marcus Aurelius used to fight anxious thoughts, why comfort itself is the thing making ancient wiring feel so miserable. 50,000 years ago, a man's nervous system had one job: keep him alive until tomorrow. Every rustling bush was treated as a possible threat because the cost of ignoring a real lion was death, while the cost of a false alarm was just wasted energy. That imbalance shaped your brain permanently. Scientists call this negativity bias. Bad news, criticism, and danger grab far more of your attention than good news ever does. One nasty comment on a post can outweigh 50 kind ones in your memory, because 10,000 generations of ancestors survived by fearing the worst. Status meant survival too. In small hunter-gatherer bands, rank determined who ate first, who mated, and who lived through a hard winter. Men evolved a constant, low-level radar for where they stood in the group, always comparing, always ranking themselves against other men nearby. That radar never switched off. It just changed targets. Instead of comparing hunting skill against 30 tribe members, your brain now compares your salary, body, and relationship status against millions of curated strangers online, a comparison your ancestors' brain was never designed to survive. This mismatch has a name: evolutionary mismatch. Researcher Randolph Ness describes it as ancient instincts firing correctly, but inside an environment they were never built for, producing anxiety and dissatisfaction that feel personal but are actually just outdated software. Meanwhile, tribal belonging used to be guaranteed. You were born into roughly 150 familiar faces, a number psychologist Robin Dunbar later identified as the natural limit of human social bonds our brains can meaningfully track. Today, many men are surrounded by thousands of online connections while feeling more isolated than any hunter-gatherer ever did. Your brain registers likes and follows as weak, unsatisfying substitutes for the deep tribal bonds it actually evolved to crave and depend on for survival. So the caveman brain leaves modern men anxious, comparing, and lonely, all while technically living safer and more comfortable lives than any generation before them. Comfort didn't fix the wiring. It just removed the real threats the wiring was designed to fight. This is exactly where Stoicism enters the picture. Roughly 2,000 years ago in Greece and Rome, philosophers like Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius built a mental framework for calming a mind wired for constant threat without knowing anything about evolution. Epictetus, a former slave-turned-philosopher, taught what's now called the dichotomy of control. Sort everything in life into two piles: things you control, like your effort and reactions, and things you don't, like other people's opinions or a market crash. Your caveman brain doesn't naturally separate these piles. It treats a stranger's rude comment with the same alarm as a physical threat, flooding you with stress chemicals over something that cannot actually harm you. Epictetus essentially built a manual override switch. Marcus Aurelius, an actual Roman emperor, used a technique modern psychologists now call negative visualization. Each morning he mentally rehearsed difficulties, rude colleagues, unfair setbacks, even death itself, so his ancient threat detection system wouldn't be blindsided later. This sounds pessimistic, but the opposite is true. By preloading his brain's alarm system with expected hardship, Marcus prevented it from spiraling into panic when hardship actually arrived. He was essentially patching his own evolutionary software in real time. Seneca focused heavily on status anxiety specifically, warning that chasing wealth and reputation was an endless treadmill, since the caveman brain never says enough. Every promotion or purchase simply resets your internal ranking system, hunting for the next comparison to make. Modern research backs this up almost exactly. Psychologist Leon Festing's social comparison theory shows humans constantly measure themselves against others to gauge their own standing, a mental habit that intensifies anxiety the more comparisons are available to make. And comparisons have never been more available. Your ancestors compared themselves to roughly 150 people they actually knew. You now compare yourself to influencers, executives, and edited photos representing the highlight reel of millions of strangers. Stoicism's answer wasn't to suppress this instinct, but to redirect it. Marcus Aurelius argued a man should measure himself only against his own virtue and effort, not against luck, other people's circumstances, or things fundamentally outside his control. This reframing matters because your amygdala, the brain's ancient alarm center, cannot tell the difference between a real physical threat and a purely social one, like public embarrassment or rejection. Both trigger the identical stress response your ancestors needed for lions. Neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky has shown that humans are unique among primates in activating this same stress machinery over abstract worries, mortgages, emails, social status, rather than actual physical danger, which is exactly why chronic stress feels so relentless today. Stoic practice essentially trains the mind to interrupt this ancient alarm before it hijacks behavior. Pausing to ask, is this within my control, recreates almost exactly the mental override modern therapists now teach for anxiety and catastrophic thinking. Cognitive behavioral therapy, one of today's most evidence-based treatments for anxiety, borrows directly from Stoic structure. Philosopher William Irvine and psychologist Albert Ellis have both noted that separating thoughts from automatic reactions is essentially Epictetus, updated with modern clinical language. There's another Stoic idea worth mentioning here: Memento Mori, Latin for remember you will die. Marcus Aurelius wrote reminders of his own mortality directly into his private journal, not to feel morbid, but to shrink whatever petty status battle was consuming his attention that day. Death awareness has a strange effect on the caveman brain's priorities. Once a man genuinely accepts his time is limited, arguments over rank, reputation, and other people's opinions start to feel exactly as small and temporary as they actually are in the bigger picture. Modern neuroscience has its own version of this insight. Psychiatrist Anna Lemke's research on dopamine explains how smartphones exploit the exact reward circuitry ancestors relied on for food and status, delivering constant small hits that leave the caveman brain chronically overstimulated and dissatisfied. Every notification mimics a tiny status update. Someone noticed you. Someone ranked you. Someone responded. Multiply that hundreds of times a day, and the ancient reward system that once regulated itself around real hunting and real tribal bonds simply burns out from overuse. Physical stillness compounds the problem further. Hunter-gatherers move constantly, which naturally metabolize stress hormones like cortisol through real physical effort. Modern men often sit anxious at desks all day, with adrenaline and cortisol building up with nowhere physical left to go. Stoic writers didn't know about cortisol, but they understood the pattern instinctively. Seneca recommended daily walks and physical exertion specifically to settle an agitated mind, treating the body as a release valve for exactly the kind of tension modern lifestyles now trap indefinitely. Journaling was another core Stoic practice, and meditations itself was never meant for publication. It was Marcus Aurelius privately arguing with his own caveman brain every night, a habit modern therapists still recommend today for processing anxious or intrusive thoughts. So modern men aren't broken, or uniquely weak, or failing some test their grandfathers passed easily. They are running Stone Age software inside a world engineered to constantly trigger it, through notifications, comparisons, and manufactured urgency designed to hijack attention. Stoicism doesn't erase the caveman brain, because that isn't actually possible. It gives you a conscious layer on top of it, a way to notice the ancient alarm firing and choose your next move instead of reacting on pure instinct. The men who feel calmest today usually aren't the ones with the fewest problems in their lives. They are simply the ones who've quietly learned, often without ever realizing it, to separate what their ancient wiring is screaming about from what genuinely deserves their attention and effort. So the next time you feel that flash of anxiety over a comment, a comparison, or an uncertain future, remember, that feeling is 50,000 years old. It kept your ancestors alive. It just never got the memo that the danger has changed. Do you notice your own caveman brain reacting to modern situations, comparison, rejection, or status? Tell us the moment it happens most in the comments below. If this made you see your own anxiety a little differently, hit subscribe for more science-backed breakdowns of the mind hiding inside every modern man.